Good morning, everyone. My name is Maya Luria with TMC for Seniors, and I am so excited that it's January and we are focusing on innovations in healthy aging. Today, we're going to be talking about the precision aging approach with the McKnight Brain Institute. And I have Dr. Lee Ryan here with me. She is a PhD professor and department head of the University of Arizona, psychology department. Dr. Ryan has an interest in researching the aging brain and how memory changes with age, and how she identifies and maintains a healthy brain through a healthy lifestyle. She's also the associate director of the Evelyn McKnight Brain Institute, and the McKnight Institute's mission is to discover the mysteries of the normally aging brain to achieve a lifetime of cognitive health. The University of Arizona has been awarded a $60 million, you heard me, $60 million to lead the Precision Aging Network. And the goal is to develop more effective aging treatments and interventions targeted to individuals. Lee's here to share more information about the precision aging approach research that they are doing at the McKnight Institute. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you very, very much, Maya. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to the day when we can be together in person. But for now, we'll stick with online, and it's great to be here today.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and put your presentation up. You may be watching us today on one of our YouTube channels, or from our on our YouTube channel, or from one of our Facebook pages. So if you have any questions for Dr. Ryan, go ahead and leave them in the comments for us, and we'll address those after her presentation.
All right. So should I start? Great.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. So today, as Maya said, I'm going to be talking about the topic of precision aging, and I'll tell you what that means in a second. But I want to start today by talking about aging in a very personal way. So this is my mom, Emma Ryan, on her 101st birthday, and you can see that she's beside 3 generations of Ryans. Her daughter, that's me, one of her many granddaughters, and one of her many great-grandsons. Now, Emma didn't actually make it to her 102nd birthday. She passed away 2 weeks earlier than that birthday. But she teaches us something really important. First of all, I just love this picture. But also she does help us to remember something important about aging. We all worry about Alzheimer's disease and dementia, and that's important. Alzheimer's is a terrible disease that devastates individuals and devastates families. But only about 13% to 14% of older adults will experience dementia or Alzheimer's disease in their entire lifetime, even if they live to 100. My mom, 2 weeks before her demise, was still reading the newspaper. She was still meeting with friends and with family, and she was active and happy and doing things cognitively that we all hope to be doing at the end of our life. So even after 100, it is possible to keep our brains healthy. And so I want to talk about that other 85%. We always focus on, or very often we focus on Alzheimer's and risk for Alzheimer's disease. But let's talk about the rest of aging, the 85% who are not going to have dementia as they age. And of course, there are memory changes that happen as we get older, but they tend to be fairly mild, and the onset is gradual. Instead of being really disruptive to our daily lives, they're kind of the annoying things that you and I all experience, right? So just slip-ups. We forget where we put our keys. This is one that happens to me. I walk into a room and suddenly I think, why did I come in here? I just lose my train of thought. And certainly learning takes longer for us, so we're a little less efficient in learning. But the important thing is that as we age, what we see in memory is that when you learn, might take you longer to get new information in there, but once you have it, you don't forget. Now, it's important to point out that this is highly variable across individuals. So some people experience very little of these memory changes across their lifespan. Others have sort of mild changes, and others certainly experience enough memory change that it interferes with the quality of their life and potentially actually interferes with some of their daily activities and their ability to live independently. But this is very different than what we see in Alzheimer's disease, where memory changes are very obvious, they're very early. And it's not just that learning takes longer, but over time, individuals completely lose the ability to learn new information. And the most striking thing that differentiates Alzheimer's from normal aging is the forgetting. They begin to forget their past. They forget information. They forget people from their past. And this is, of course, devastating to families. There are other things that happen as well. They begin to lose their spatial abilities, so they have a tendency to be lost. They have difficulty in making decisions. And for some individuals, there are personality changes. These are things that we don't see in normal aging. So it really is very different. But what we want to do in the study that I'm going to talk about is we really want to understand this normal aging trajectory. Why is it that some individuals can maintain their cognitive functions across their entire lifespan, while some individuals experience sort of some changes, others experience much more change that interferes with their daily lives, and then still others go on to develop disorders of the brain like Alzheimer's disease. Believe it or not, even though after years and years of studying aging, we really don't understand how we can predict what this individual is going to experience as an older adult. We don't know. What we do know so far is that aging is incredibly complicated. There are all kinds of different things that increase risk for not only experiencing cognitive impairments, but also for developing Alzheimer's disease. So your environment, where you grew up, what kind of education you had. I think I have education on here somewhere. Your genetic makeup, various kinds of diseases and disorders like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, etc., hypertension. Stress has a huge impact on the trajectory of the healthy brain and how the brain ages. Social engagement, nutrition, and cognitive engagement. I'm preaching to the choir here because you're all here and listening to this this talk today, but maintaining that engagement with and learning across our entire lifespan, we know has a really positive impact on our brain aging. But it's even more complicated than this, because what we also know is that these factors all work in combination with one another in very, very complicated ways. So in order to understand the aging process and to predict who is going to maintain their brain health and who's going to have cognitive problems, we really need to look at all these factors. So one of the things that I started to do a few years ago with a group of my colleagues was to think about aging in a different way. Why is it that we can't yet figure out who is going to age in different ways, and what can we do to keep the brain healthy? So we took this idea of precision medicine. This is a concept that actually came from the field of cancer. And in cancer, quite a number of years ago now, researchers realized that two people with the same tumor, for example, will respond very differently to different kinds of drugs because of their genetics. So it wasn't enough to just figure out what the tumor was. They needed to know about the individual so that they could tailor the treatment for that cancer for that given person. And we took this and applied it to aging, and we call it precision aging. And the simple fact is, and it seems so obvious to everyone, is that no two people are alike. No two people age in the same way and with the same risk factors. So you can have 3 different people, let's say, in their 70s who are experiencing memory problems, but they got there for very different reasons. One of them might have cardiovascular disease, so they might have heart disease, they might have high blood pressure that is not well controlled. Another person, their heart may be perfectly fine, but they're a caregiver and they've experienced chronic stress for many years. And a third person with that memory impairment might be there because they're actually in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease and they have that pathology in the brain. On our cognitive tests, they look exactly the same. But unless you understand how they got there, there's no way that you can create a treatment that is going to help those 3 individuals. And the truth is that for all these years, the field of aging research has treated all 3 of those people in the same way. We bring people into our lab and we test them and we study them as if everybody is the same. And of course, they're not. So what we're doing here with precision aging is taking this individualized approach. We really want to understand the individual profiles of risk and resilience, what increases your risk, but also what is protective against those kinds of risk factors. And we're going to look across many, many different areas of function, both physical, genetic, and social and lifestyle factors. And it's only then that we think that we can create individualized interventions. So as Maya said, the National Institute on Aging thought this was a great idea. And in September of this year, they awarded the University of Arizona a $60 million grant to study precision aging. It includes many researchers from across the country. This is just a small list of the primary researchers in every corner of the United States. And there's several different components to this, and I wanted to tell you about them and tell you how you can be involved in this amazing study. So the first part of it is going to be an online portion of the study. It's called MindCrowd, and there's the website, https://mindcrowd.org. It's a collaboration that I started about 4 years ago with Matt Huntelman, who is a geneticist in Phoenix at the Translational Genomics Institute, or TGen. And if you go to mindcrowd.org, you can sign a consent form, and then you can do some cognitive testing. We ask a bunch of questions about your health, about your lifestyle, etc., and about your background. And we will be able to reach many, many people across the entire United States through this website. In fact, we already have 250,000 people in the US who have signed up from age 18 to close to 100. I think we have a couple of people who are 100 years old who have done the study so far. And you can see that this was only actually when we had about 80,000 people in the study. And you can see the little blue or the kind of turquoise and red dots. Each of these is one person. Okay, so they really are across the US. They're in every state. And really importantly, the blue dots or the turquoise ones are people in rural communities. And this is something that's really important to us. Normally, our studies are done in fairly large, urban settings where there are big research universities, and we know so little about really, truly the cognitive functioning of the population across the entire United States. So by using these online tools, we're able to include in our study people who would never otherwise be able to come to our laboratories. We're doing other kind of cool things too. We can do things through the mail. In fact, we've shown that if we send little kits to people in the mail, they'll do little different tests and send us the results. We can also send them a little kit where they actually do a finger prick and they give us a blood spot so we can do genetic testing for all these people across the US. We say our goal is 500,000. We're already now, in the last year, we've increased it by almost another 100,000. So we think that it's entirely possible that over the next 5 years, we'll get to 1 million people. And this will be really the largest study of its kind anywhere ever to study normal aging. In addition to, and I just wanted to show you, this is Tucson, Arizona. So of course a lot of people in and around Tucson know about MindCrowd because I talk about it in my talks, etc. So we do tend to have a congregation of people near Tucson, and that's really important because the other part of this study is that we want people to come into our laboratories to do more in-depth testing, to do some of the kinds of things that we can't actually do online. So we're going to have 2,000 people who will be chosen out of MindCrowd to come to laboratories at 4 different universities: Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Emory University in Atlanta, the University of Miami, and then here in Tucson. And these people are going to undergo a very extensive set of tests that include, of course, lots of things like cognition. We're going to evaluate their diet, their physical health. They're going to do MRI of the brain. We'll draw blood so that we can get lots of information about things like inflammation, what else? Inflammation, cardiac functioning, but also genetics. We'll be assessing sleep quality and daily activity. So all of these people will get a smartwatch, a Garmin smartwatch, which they'll wear on their wrist, and they'll send data back to us so that we'll be able to know exactly what they're doing for a longer period of time during the day, how much exercise they get, how much activity they have, what kind of activity, but also the quality of their sleep. So this will be the in-depth study that complements the MindCrowd study. These participants are going to come to our labs every 2 years. And the reason for that is that we want to get this snapshot of how they're doing at baseline, at the first time that they come in to visit us. But we also want to see how they do over time. We want to see what it is about these profiles of risk and resilience that predict who will progress to maintain their cognitive functions over time and who may develop more significant memory problems, and then also who goes on to potentially develop Alzheimer's disease or other disorders of the brain. So this is a really exciting study. We were just funded in September, and so MindCrowd has been up and running for quite some time. The expanded version of it is going to be ready February 1st. And then we hope that we'll start testing people in person over the next month or so. It's a little challenging right now, as you know, with COVID going on and getting this big spike from Omicron. But the University of Arizona is still testing in person. We have a lot of safeguards in place so that we have been able to show that we can continue to do our research with older adults and keep them safe. So that's a great, exciting thing that we hope to get up and running very soon. Where is this all going to go? So what we hope to do from this is to individualize our understanding of aging. So as I said, one person that we see in this study might have real problems with because of their diet and their daily activity. Another person has extreme stress. They may not have adequate social support, something that we're becoming more and more aware as that is really necessary for maintaining physical health and mental health and brain health across the lifespan. They may have genetic risks that that increase the likelihood that they're going to be experiencing cognitive impairments. So we'll take all of these things into consideration. And for each individual, we want to create an individualized risk profile. So we'll look at, for example, their stress profile. We'll look at immune functioning. Here's cardiovascular risk for just a participant that I've made up here. Glucose dysregulation is a big one that leads to diabetes and prediabetes, something that we know also has a huge impact on brain health, and a number of others. And we'll be able to put this into a kind of composite score so that we'll be able to give people a profile of where they have risk so that they know what areas they need to focus on if they want to prevent brain changes as they age, but also to help them if they're already experiencing changes in cognition. Ultimately, the goal over 5 years is to put this whole thing on a smartphone so that we can reach even more people. You know, one of the things about this study is that it relies heavily on the internet, right? So most of the study, or much of the study, is being done via MindCrowd. So you have to have access to a computer. A surprising number of older adults now do have access to computers, but many more have access to a smartphone. So the statistics are really quite astounding now that over the age of 75, 68% of older adults have access to a smartphone. That's not everybody, right? That's just 68%. That means about a third of the people in the country still over the age of 75 don't have access to a smartphone. But if you turn it around the other way, you can say, well, but that does mean that millions and millions of people across the US have access to a smartphone. So being able to roll this out to many more people via a smartphone, and being able to not only test them, but give them this kind of feedback is really important. Right now, we're not doing treatment or interventions. So we're just trying to create these risk profiles and understand these individualized profiles. But ultimately, the goal is to create tailored treatments for the individual. And we hope that around the third year of the study, we are going to start creating treatments that are individualized for each person. So imagine that, for example, in this individual, they're low on inflammation. They are actually have maybe genetic protection against neuropathology. Their neuron functioning is fine, but they have vascular problems. So for this individual, we're going to tailor a treatment that will really focus on increasing blood flow to the brain, increasing the health of the cardiovascular system. Someone else may look very, very different. What's really neat about this idea of having a smartphone is that we can then, as let's say they're going through a treatment and they're following their treatment via, prompts from their smartphone, we can actually show them then in real time how this risk profile changes as their heart condition gets better, as their blood pressure is better controlled, as they increase their cardiovascular abilities through, say, exercise and diet. They'll actually be able to see on their phone that their risk profile is changing. And again, it's so important to emphasize this idea that this profile isn't going to apply to every individual. So, what happens right now in these studies of when people come to the labs to do treatment studies. So we create an intervention and we invite a whole bunch of older adults into the laboratory. And many of them, as you've probably heard from on the, through the news, et cetera, focus on increasing exercise, right? In different ways, but much of it is sort of focused on cardiovascular and aerobic exercise. But everybody gets the same treatment, the exact same treatment. Why would we do that? So for someone like me, who works out a lot and I run, and by the way, I am 65, I will be 65 in another week. So I could easily be in this study and this could all apply to me. But for me, increasing exercise is really not going to do a lot because I already have a high level of that. For me, if you could fix my sleep, you could probably do a lot for my brain because I've had sleep problems my whole life, and that probably relates to all of the stressors that I have in my life, as so many of us have experienced, particularly over the last 2 years with COVID and social isolation and all the things that are going on with our families and friends. So we really need to, and that intervention for me is going to look very different. Maybe for me, meditation is going to help. Actually working on what we call sleep hygiene is going to help me a lot, much more so than focusing on exercise. So you can really take this idea right now and apply it to yourself. You can say, well, what areas of my function, of my life are pretty good, and which ones do I think need work? And then what kinds of lifestyle interventions could help with this, so that I am actually thinking about my individual risks and profile of risks and resilience. Our treatments are not going to be just focused on lifestyle. So certainly some of them will be exercise and diets. Those are obvious things that we can work on. Meditation, increasing social interaction, making people into active learners. That's another one that we know, all kind of lifestyle things. But we do think that there's a place here for interventions that are pharmacology. So the development of new drugs. The thing I always say to people is, look, if eating an apple every day is a really good idea for your health. But if you break your leg, eating an apple every day isn't really going to help you. At that point, you need more targeted medical intervention. So for individuals who are already experiencing changes in the function of their brain that we can measure through MRI or through cognitive testing, there are probably things that we can do that will more directly target the brain and the health of the brain. And there are actually, my colleagues and I are working on some very interesting new kinds of drugs that will help to change the function of the brain. One of them, for example, is an anti-inflammatory. Now, lots of us take anti-inflammatories on a fairly regular basis. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, Aleve, ibuprofen, those kinds of things. But you may not know that the vast majority of those anti-inflammatories have no effect on the brain, because the brain is separated by this thing that we call the blood-brain barrier. So the vascular system separates off the brain so that big molecules like these anti-inflammatory molecules don't go into the brain. So we're developing a new kind of anti-inflammatory that we know actually works in the brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. It's a natural substance. It's called a neuropeptide that is naturally occurring in the brain, so we know it is very safe. So some of it will be lifestyle, some of it will be drug interventions, and maybe it's going to be a combination of those things, because we want to not only treat what's happening in the brain or has already happened, but we want to prevent more changes in the brain, or prevent them altogether by making sure that people have risk profiles that all look in the good direction. Risk, by the way, is up here and protection is down. So we want them to look good on all of these kinds of profiles. So that's where we're going with this. It's a really exciting project. As I said, we're working with people all across the country. But the center of this is here at the University of Arizona. And many of you may not know that the University of Arizona is really one of the foremost places in the world for studying aging, the aging brain, but also the aging everything. I think Maya has a wonderful set of talks coming up for you where you're going to hear about the immune system in aging and hear about the glucose regulation and diabetes in aging. So we have this amazing opportunity to bring all of these experts together to really understand in a holistic way how to maintain health, not just physical health, not just mental health, not just cognitive health, but holistically thinking about the whole person. So this is an enormous opportunity for us, and we're really, really excited to do this. And I hope that all of you will consider being part of this. You know, I love this picture. If you haven't seen it before, the World Health Organization identifies health. It defines health as including physical, cognitive, emotional, and social well-being. We need to think about all those things, not just one, not just the other. It's not just about heart health. It's not just about mental health and emotional well-being. It's really thinking about the whole package, because there isn't a barrier between the brain and the rest of the body. They're, believe it or not, they're connected. And a lot of us researchers kind of forget that. And we need to think about the whole person. If you would like to participate in the Precision Aging Network, there are a number of ways that you can do this. The most important one is to go to mindcrowd.org and sign up. The first set of little tests that you'll do takes about 10 minutes. It's not a lot of work. But if you give us permission after that 10-minute testing session to contact you again, then we'll start rolling out more tests, more surveys to you. And in each of those 4 sites, Tucson, Atlanta, Baltimore, and Miami, then from that region, from the people around those centers, we'll invite people in for doing that intensive in-person study that I was telling you about. If you'd like to hear more about the study and you're curious about it, or you'd like to sign up and make sure that you're going to be part of this, this is my laboratory, the Cognition and Neuroimaging Laboratory. I've been here at U of A for, I hate to say it, like 25 years now. So the CNL lab has been around for a long time. You can email us, or you can give us a call and leave a message, and we will get back to you and tell you more about how you can participate in this and many other studies that we have going on. So I'll leave it at that, and I would love to take questions, and I'm happy to do that.
Thanks so much, Lee. That was great. I'm so excited that here in Tucson, Arizona, we have this study that is going on. It's really neat to be able to have this and have the U of A be sort of the lead on a $60 million study with the NIH. So I do have a couple of questions. One was the target group to apply for the study. Do you have to be, or is there certain criteria as far as age is concerned to do that?
Yeah, good question. I didn't put all those details up, but the big study across the U.S. is anyone from age 18 to 100 or beyond, whoever we can have. For the in-person study, we're going to ask people from age 50 to 80. And the reason for that, so 50 to 80, 79, essentially. The reason for that is that we want this to be longitudinal. So even though we're not studying people to begin with in their 80s, we're going to be following these people as they get older, and we're going to see how they do as they get into their 80s and 90s. Well, we hope it'll go on that long. So it'll be age 50 to 79. But other than that, you know, we want people with a range of, you know, backgrounds, the health risks, all kinds of stuff. So we're not putting very many boundaries on who can be in the study. One of the things that I didn't mention actually is that we're very interested in understanding how aging differs across race and ethnic groups. So most of the research that all of us have done has been carried out on Caucasians, not surprisingly. We know very little about the aging process for Hispanic Latinos or for non-Hispanic Black individuals. So across the 4 sites, we're going to be trying to balance the numbers of people who come into our laboratories so that we can ask those questions. I mean, it might be that the aging process and all those risk profiles are going to be exactly the same for different racial ethnic groups. We actually don't know that right now. So just to give you one example of that, it appears from the small amount of research that has been done that hypertension, so having high blood pressure, has a more negative effect on cognition in Caucasians than it does in individuals who are Hispanic and Latinx. So those are the kinds of things that we want to understand.
Okay, great. And what about, so if you want to sign up, is the best thing to do to go to the MindCrowd.org to get started, if possible, I guess, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I am going to put that website up here. So MindCrowd.org.
Yep.
Also, I did notate, we've got the phone number in case we have somebody who maybe doesn't have access.
Yes.
And that number would be 520-621-8792. So would they get materials mailed to them if that was the case? Or would that just be for the in-person?
So so if they're near us, what we can, if they can come to the lab and they want to do MindCrowd and they don't have access to a good quality computer, I mean, you don't have to have a great computer, but you can't do it on a smartphone right now. So you have to have a computer.
Okay.
We'll set it up so that they can come into the lab and do MindCrowd and do all of the testing in our lab. It's still online, but they can sit there and do it. So we'll make that available to them.
Okay, that's great. And it's good to know that you can only use it via a computer right now and not through the smartphone yet.
Right, not yet.
Yes, okay. I had a question early on asking if genetic factors or environmental factors have a bigger impact on your cognitive lifespan.
Oh, that's such a great question. I would say the answer is yes.
Right.
It is so fascinating, right? Because we know that both of these things have an impact, and they can be, and genetics can be negative, but it can also be protective. So when we see people with, say, let's talk about diabetes. We might see someone who with diabetes that experiences cognitive impairments, but we also see people with diabetes who do not experience cognitive impairment over their, as they age. And that could be because there are protective factors that are genetic. And so we're looking at genetics not only in terms of the negative impact. We think about that all the time, risk for Alzheimer's disease, risk for cardiovascular disease, but in terms of the protection that it might give us as well. The other fascinating thing about genetics that we've learned over the last 20 years, really like 10, 15, is that genetic risk can change based on your lifestyle factors. So we know that this is called epigenetics, so that we know that someone can have a gene, but the expression of that gene can be altered by your lifestyle. So if you exercise, you can essentially, and I keep coming back to exercise because that's one that everybody talks about a lot, but if you exercise, you might, even if you, let's say you have the gene that increases significantly your risk for diabetes. If you exercise and maintain a healthy diet, you can actually change the expression of that gene and essentially turn it off. That's amazing to us, right? So this interaction between lifestyle and genetics is really the reason why we need these huge numbers of people, so that we can look at these complex patterns.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Now, are there any exercises that you can do to keep your brain active and healthy that you would recommend?
So I'm here to say that yes, absolutely, but it's not probably what you think I'm going to say. You know, my dear old friend and colleague Betty Glisky was very fond of saying, if you do the New York Times crossword puzzle every single day, you'll get really good at doing the New York Times crossword puzzle.
Right.
So when you do these brain games that are so popular online, when you do puzzles and all that kind of stuff, what we see from the literature is it's not bad, but it doesn't generalize. It doesn't bleed over into other areas of cognitive function. So they're not really worth the time that most people put into these brain games. Far better way to do it is to be exactly what you're doing right now, is to be what we call a lifelong learner. You are constantly exposing your brain to complex new information and learning about that. And the thing that has made it so difficult in the pandemic is that often those lifelong learning experiences also go along with social interaction. So you're putting yourself in places where you're with like-minded people and you're talking to them and you're gaining new friendships as well. That's become really hard in the pandemic. But I would say those two things, maintaining this sort of lifelong learning, and the other thing is social interaction. And here's the critical thing about social interaction. I know it's become a lot more difficult during these last 2 years for everyone. The research tells us that it's not the number of friends, it's the quality of those social interactions. So having one or two really close friends that you can share with on an emotional level, on a personal level, is way better than having 50 great, friends to hang around with. That's fun too, right? But maintaining those close relationships is really important for us. So if there were two things I would say, those are the two. Be a lifelong learner and make sure you cultivate a few of those really close relationships.
And actually, in December, we discussed exactly what you're talking about lifelong learning and sort of challenging yourself and learning new things. Even if it was puzzles, but it's just something that you maybe don't always do on a regular basis. You have to continue to sort of challenge your brain as well. Right. And of course, the social interaction, as we know, is so incredibly important, and particularly now with everything that is happening. But I like that what you just said was, even if it's just one or two friends that you share with, regularly, that can be a huge help. So,
I know that the pandemic has been so challenging, and it's, we're all on Zoom all the time and we're all online. And that's not great when that's the only thing that you can do, but there have been benefits. And I'll give you an example in each of those categories. So one is that there are more people doing the kind of thing that we're talking about right now. So being a lifelong learner, engaging in new learning because they've realized, and because people are offering so much more of that information and these kinds of lectures and workshops, etc., online. So it's really opened things up for people who might have difficulty, actual physical reasons, or they're a caregiver and they can't necessarily leave their home. They have a lot more opportunities now to engage in that kind of learning online. And I'll use a very personal example on the social side of things. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, I've had a great dear friend in Canada. I'm from Canada. Dear friend who I went to grad school with, and we really sucked at keeping in touch with one another, right? Like we once a year, maybe twice a year, we were not very good at that. Once when the pandemic started, she is actually an ICU nurse. And so she and I started connecting with via Zoom around once a week. And we've kept that up. And it has been extraordinary to really connect again with her. I was able to go back to Canada not that long ago. And as soon as they, like literally like the day after they opened the border, I went back to Canada, not to see my family, by the way, but to see Kristen. So there are, some silver linings. They're hard to keep in mind, but those two things, I think, it does open up possibilities.
No, you're right, and there is a glimmer out there of hope, right? So, I had one other question that just came in, and that was: is there an opportunity to volunteer to help with the study if you don't get chosen for the actual study?
Oh, such a great question. One of the things that I will say right now, maybe. So one of the things that we are developing is this idea of, so I think that right now our society does not value the incredible level of expertise and enthusiasm and wisdom that exists in our older adult population, right? You retire, you're supposed to just go play. And as the head of the psychology department, I know that there are many things that older adults could be doing that could really benefit us, benefit our students, benefit the community, and benefit the individual who is the volunteer. Volunteerism itself, when you have meaning, when you're doing something meaningful, we know actually that is a real bonus for mental health and cognitive health. So we're planning various ways that we can, call on our older adults in the community to help us. We don't have a really great plan for that, but it's absolutely on my radar. It's really something important that I think we need to do, and we're just missing out on. We're missing out on all kinds of opportunities.
Excellent. Okay. So stay tuned for more information on that from the sounds of it. So that's great. I want to thank you so much for being here. I do want to also just let everyone know, because we're doing innovations in healthy aging, we do have several programs coming up over the next month or two. Next week, we do have, we're actually going to be doing something with one of your colleagues. Matt Grilli is going to be talking about a study that he's been working on for fishing and aging, which I know is really important right now, particularly with all of the computer use and smartphone use that everyone is doing. So I hope you'll join us for that. That'll be on Tuesday, the 18th at 10 a.m. And then we have Innovations in Healthy Aging, and that will be with Kathleen Insel from the U of A College of Nursing. The next week, we will also be looking at new research in regulating diabetes. So stay tuned. We would love to have everybody join us for all of these presentations. We will also share this information. I'm hoping you're going to get a bunch of new signups as well, Lee, for the study. It's really exciting to see, and I'm so excited that the U of A is part of it. And really leading this effort on the Precision Aging Network. So thank you again for being here, Lee.
You're very welcome. Great to be here.